Hello, my friend from Chilly, Wisconsin.
Chilly, Wisconsin. It's about to be chilly here in Chattanooga. We're going to have some low 30s here as our low in the next few days. Yeah, it's going to be cool. Hey, we'll take the cool and crisp. It is April 7th, 2022. Welcome aboard, everybody. This is the Crushing Iron Podcast, and we are episode 571.
Mm-hmm.
It is the season for crisp, cool weather, and then 2 days
Wakes you
later
up.
it'll be, then 2 days later it'll be 90. And then 4 days later, you'll be in a gigantic stream of panic because all of your fitness has been lost because you stepped outside, the pollen level was high, the flowers are blooming, the humidity is back, the dew point's in the 70s, and all of a sudden, even though you haven't missed a workout in 3 months, your fitness is declining and panic will set in. It is the most excruciatingly difficult time of year for coaches all across the world. Well, not across the world, but especially here in the South where shit blooms and it causes all kinds of panic. You walk out to your car and all of a sudden your hood is yellow and you think, here it is. I should have started my Claritin or whatever kind of allergy med you take back in February, like this guy. Listen, as soon as February rolls around, I'm like, you know what? It's never too early to start popping a little Claritin. And I've come out of this relatively unscathed. But it is here. It is happening. And we'll talk a little bit about panic here in a little bit. But first time tuning in, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. You have a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general, and that your time is valuable. So we appreciate you tuning in today. We cover it all. We'll do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We'll do race recaps. We'll also do race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through, what our athletes are going through. We work with a very wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner level amateurs all the way up to elite level athletes trying to get back to Kona, and everyone in between. Most of our athletes are scattered across the U.S., but we also work with some international athletes, and we will often use the communication with them and just observation of training peaks and feedback in our conversations to drive the topic of the day, which we will have pretty much half of that conversation we'll talk about today, and the other half we'll hop into our Facebook group, which is Crushing Iron Group. You can search it on Facebook and answer one simple question. We'll let you right in. A lot of awesome people in there, very, very well experienced. We got newbies, we got professionals, everyone in between. A lot of awesome resources in there and a great community. So chime in, ask some questions, and get some great feedback, and we'll go in there and use them, allow them to help us drive the topic of the day, which you will by doing a Q&A. But that's it. We don't do sponsors. We definitely don't do ads, but we do have an agenda, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Yeah. Yes, we do. And, what came to my mind when you were saying that earlier was it comes back to, I love when you say we pay to do this. It's a sport that we pay to do, and it's supposed to be a fun sport. And then it turns into like this big mountain of anxiety whenever we're getting to the fun part,
It is like we talked about last week, or earlier this week rather. The closer we get to the event, the more pressure that we feel, and we stop treating it like a hobby and something that we enjoy and that we love, and we start treating it more like something that we have to do, and that we have these gigantic expectations we've set upon ourselves, and that it's a gold medal or a failure, right? Like we're on this gigantic stage, and we're really on a stage of one, right? And it's for ourselves. We do this for ourselves. We just to get healthy, to compete against ourselves. And while you can be competitive and try to, be other people in your age group or qualify for this, we ultimately get into this just to push ourselves, right? And I think the closer you get to race day, you see athletes kind of veer from that thought process and that belief. And that's when they get really, really, really caught up in, the negativity. And frankly, it's panic season, baby. People are ripe for the panic. It is, it is panic season. I've already fielded multiple texts this morning about Ironman Texas or races in general. And like we talked about earlier this week, the closer you get to the race, the more things you start in scenarios you start to everyone is the least optimistic the closer you are to race day. 3 months out, oh, the world is your oyster, baby. I got this thing on lock. I am cruising. Closer you get to race day, you're straight panic mode. Like all you do is think about all the things that can go wrong. Very few athletes visualize all the things that can go right on their greatest day. They just start to think about what if this is going, what if I don't do as well? What if I don't PR? What if this, how do you handle that? And like, well, first off, why can't we just handle this after the fact? Why are we worrying about handling anything, right? That's a might, right? Or a maybe, or even a likely not going to happen. Why are we even talking about it right now? Why aren't instead you visualizing and projecting positivity and optimism instead of, being negative, right? And not feeling ready. And it's so much of it has to do with, listen, there's a whole lot that goes into this year. Like I was talking with an athlete who swung by yesterday, and I've mentioned this with a lot of people, is that, everyone the last year or two has been clamoring and excited and just really wanting everything in the world to get back to normal, right? Everything, races to be on, kids back in school, not many people want to go back to work, but still someone's got to give. But I think the piece of that has gone, frankly, unrecognized and maybe even underappreciated is that the stress level you got so accustomed to not having, right? In that, yes, there was different stress levels the last 2 or 3 years, but now, I know you do too, but I've got a ton of athletes who latter part of 2020, predominantly the entire year of 2021, if they were, 3 to 4 week travelers, they weren't traveling at all. Period. Right. So their schedule is a lot easier. They're able to do, really, plan out the week. There was nothing, and nothing was interrupted. Right. Everything was smooth and silky. And they got in this like, I can just, wake up, do my job remotely. I got to train. Now you layer back in the stress of travel, whether it's you got to fly, to different locations, different cities to work. Some athletes go overseas for work. Some people have to, drive, consistently back and forth. And we've all forgotten the toll that takes on your body. And so what happened is you see, especially with these early season races, and now that the majority of companies and things are traveling pretty much full gas now, is that you signed up for a race last year when life was one way, right? You weren't traveling. Your schedule was a lot easier. The stress was maybe easier to manage in a lot of areas. And now that's back. And so you projected these expectations of what you thought might happen, honestly, even maybe 4 or 5 months ago, right? Like you end of the year, maybe with a great Ironman, like I'm going to do St. George, I'm going to do Texas, I'm going to do these early season races. Man, my year is cruising. And all of a sudden, 3 months later, your boss is like, hey, you're back to traveling every other week, 4 days. And you're like, excuse me, what? I mean, I know I wanted to. I know I was begging for get back to normal, but that's a piece I didn't really want to get back to. And so you're having, and so when you go back to we always talk about managing stress. That's just a huge piece of the pie that athletes I think are trying to navigate their last year's expectations with what life was like, right? Which is like that every year. We always sign up a year in advance, or most people for a year in advance for a full, even for 70.3. When life is one way, then the next year, 6 weeks out, 8 weeks out, whatever it is, things aren't the same anymore. And you focus more on the work you haven't gotten in because life was different, right? Or you've been injured or just unmotivated, instead of being present and focusing on what you did get in. And then also just, understanding and realizing from like a broader bird's eye view and a healthy perspective of, all right, things are totally different, right? I know. But listen, once you put an expectation in your mind, it is really, really hard to get out, right? Even if you can rationalize it to the extent of, okay, I know that life has been basically like one gigantic clusterfuck the last 6 months. When I signed up for the race, I still saw myself going sub 12. So all you're thinking about is that, and anything less or so than that is a failure. And it's just it's panic time when it should be just be present, be realistic, focus on what you can do, not what you haven't done or what you can't do, and then see where it happens. Because frankly, like the athlete I was texting with this morning, was talking about, just how different things have been. And, all she's done is PR her races and is worried about, what's going to happen if I don't PR, this race. And I'm like, listen, first of all, no one's ever PR'd every race they've ever done in. If they have, they probably race like twice. And what I said was, I bet you half the athletes that I work with, their PRs came on a day they didn't expect. right? Just like in training. You don't wake up, and think, I'm going to PR today, but you go out and you run, and all of a sudden you look down at your watch and you think, holy smokes, that's the fastest I've ever ran at, whatever distance, right? Or you go out for a long run, all of a sudden you get back and, Training Peaks pops up one of those really ridiculous like little medals, and it's like fastest 10-mile ever. And you're like, excuse me? You're like, wait, I didn't expect that. And that's how it's supposed to be. But so many athletes toe the line and think, all right, I don't know what to expect today, but I'm going to give it my all. And then they get done and they feel like, how did I even accomplish this? So that's the beauty of walking into a race with no expectations, but to do your best and have the best amount of, be able to put forth the effort that you have to execute, and then see where the rest falls, not just continuously panicking about what might not happen instead of visualizing what is going to happen, and all those things are good.
Well, we've been through quite a bit. We've raced quite a bit, not as much as some people and everything like that. But I think part of what we do is sort of try to remind people of the things that we've learned, including ourselves. And when I think about, my past racing, and because I'm a victim of that too. I think, man, it's very hard not to be in PR mindset when you're training, because I guess that's the thing that you can kind of put out there that keeps, the spark flying or something like that. But it's just so funny because it seems like every time I go out and plan to set up PR, I kind of have a, less than great race. And sometimes, like I've talked about it before, but my best Ironman was when I got sick, like 2 days beforehand. This is like 4 years ago, or 5 years ago or something like that. And kind of had a cold and, the kind of the whole crusty thing going on. I'm like, shit, right before, perfect. So then I go out with no expectations and end up having my fastest race. So there's a thing, because I'm sort of in this bucket right now where I'm just way behind. I mean, like, this is probably obviously this might be the worst I've ever trained for a 70.3 for chat 70.3 this year. But, I guess what I'm thinking here is that, and I've been kind of trying to I haven't been riding. I mean, first of all, these people that travel, you guys are better, stronger people than me, because if I had to fly around the world all the time, or fly around and work for a week at a time and try to make my training work, I mean, it's just very difficult. I suppose maybe it's something you get used to and you can kind of find a groove, but even just coming up here throws me for a big loop. You just don't have your things in place, and, the timing of everything is different. So, but anyway, I'm looking at this race in a sense of like, I know I can kind of like do these high zone 1, zone 2, low kind of maybe things, and without killing myself, and just kind of, hold back. And maybe it's just because I can't do anything more. And I'm not expecting anything, but I'm kind of hoping that it turns into an okay race, just because I'm not actually trying to go out there and kill it. You know what I mean? And I think that when we put that external pressure on ourselves for that PR, it can really, I think it's a motivator. I mean, it's just an interesting concept to think between a motivator and sort of I don't want to say demoralizer, or like something that can kind of crash down on you. It can motivate, but it can crash down too. So it's like, if you put first, what is it with these PRs, man? I mean, like this, like when you hit a PR, do you like feel like a better person or anything? I mean, do you feel like, do you walk away and go, man, that's what I was going for in life? Or is it just something that, like accidental PRs where you feel awesome all day and then stuff like that happens? I just get really caught up in this concept of how we like to put certain numbers on the fence and try to hit them, when, like you always say, man, it's just the conditions of the day or whatever. You just have to sort of adapt and be the best you can in individual moments throughout that race, And it just seems like I don't know. I don't know how to beat it, because I do it too, but I'm just throwing it out there as like, boy, this can be it can be a tough thing to do when you're really trying to PR, and instead of just being smart and patient, and just go about your race and let it unfold.
I mean, I think I don't know that everyone measures themselves by their PRs, but I think what most people want is to see a reflection. And I do. I think this is the hardest part of endurance sports and training, whether you're self-coach or have a coach, is that everyone wants to see a return on their investment, right? All the time, whether it's, you go meet a friend for coffee and you expect to have a great conversation, and you're there for an hour and 55 minutes of it, they're staring at their phone, right? And you're like, that's not really what I wanted to get out of this opportunity. And I wanted to like have a conversation and talk, so you don't feel as, enriched, and you feel like you wasted your time. And so everyone wants return on their investment, and that includes the return on investment with their training, right? The time they committed to it, the money they committed to it. They just really want to see a return. And I think also it depends on how competitive you are, right? And what stage of your athletic life cycle. To be frank, like if you're fairly new to the sport and you train a decent amount, you're probably going to PR a lot, because you're still at that time where, it's like the first 20 pounds, if you're trying to lose 60, are probably the easiest, right? Because you don't have to do that much to change your fitness level, right? If you've been very sedentary, you haven't done much, you're going to see a big jump. But I think PRs are something that I think if you reframe, right, instead of using PRs, because again, PR is one, right? It's one out of, you may race 10, 15, 20, 30, of a certain distance, but the best time you're going to have, your quote unquote PR, your personal record, is going to be from the combination of, one, the best performance you ever had, that you felt the best, you executed the best, complemented by the best case scenario in terms of environment, conditions, and race course, right? So some people's best race, right, they may have competed against the field and how they did overall, they might have gotten fifth in their age group, right? Or the other one where they compete against a weaker field, a much easier race, they may have gotten first. So which one's better, right? And I always tell athletes, like, to look at the overall scale of things. The point is, and this should be everyone's point, everyone's focus is to get the very best out of themselves. That's it, regardless of age, right? Because that should be also regardless of time, right? Regardless of stress, regardless of availability. If you're an 8-hour-a-week athlete, get the best out of yourself that you can on 8 hours a week. But don't compare it to the guy down the street who can train 25 hours a week, who's single with a remote job and has has one plant, and that's it. Don't compare yourself to 20-hour Jim. Compare yourself to, 8-hour Gary. But we don't do that, right? Because all we see on Strava or Facebook or Instagram is all these people and all their greatness and what they're doing, and we compare. Why can't we do that? I'm like, who gives a shit? Like, it should be about you. And that for me, like, as I'm getting older, and I still feel like I have. And I think we use the phrase and the term PR and it means a lot of things, right? It means a ton of different things, different people. It's just the easiest thing we say, but because everything is relative. To me, when I think about setting a PR, and maybe a 70.3 distance, what I'm really thinking, or what I'm really trying to say and talk through in my head is, I don't think I've been my best yet. I think I still have more to squeeze out. But in order to get that, you also have to be very, very, very objective and honest with yourself, which is, again, a huge struggle with most people. They don't live in reality. They live in the things they wanted to do. It's not based in the reality of the situation, and sometimes you have to, project and make that honest statement as a coach. When an athlete might have a rough race and they're discouraged, you have to say, but let's be honest. Let's look at the work we've done the last 4 to 6 months, and do you feel like we did enough to equate a better result? And most of the time, almost every time, the answer is no, right? But that's not reality we live in. We live in the reality of a positive PR trend, which is, we got one last year and we got one the year before that. We are due, right? We earned another PR this year. We are owed another PR because we just keep participating, right? And again, being a prisoner of the moment, you have to look at the work that you haven't done versus the work that you have done, and which one's winning, right? And that's just an honest conversation, and I think that's something that everyone needs to. But then if you put a lot of stock in what you've done, and you've done the good work, then that's when the pressure comes, right? Because you're like, well, I've done a lot of work, so you kind of just expect a PR. You just expect one because you feel like you earned it. So much luck goes into your best day. So much luck. You have to have the luckiest day. Everything has to come together. You could be training for a race like, Ironman Texas, right? And you're having the best. And again, like that's when these early season races can be super tricky because you've done all this really high quality, high level, consistent training. You've probably seen your fitness go from, November to April. If you're not living in the state of Texas, you're in the South or the Midwest or Northeast, you're doing these numbers and you're seeing these fitness gains in, 30s, 40s, 50s. No humidity, no dew point. And then now it's effing April, right? It's end of April. And there's a high likelihood, right, that you're going to walk up and you're going to toe the start line Ironman Texas, and it's going to be 95 degrees with a high humidity and a high dew point, right? Are you guaranteed a PR of the day? Hell no, right? The wind could be 10 to 20 mile an hour headwinds. Is that gonna be something like PR conditions? No. Like take Texas 70.3 the last 3 years. Look at all 3 different years and all the different conditions they've had, and tell me if you can really gauge, right? Because if you look back through athletes' files, get the bike, for example, and I'll use a course like Texas 70.3 because it's the same one, and just how the wind has been the last 3 years. Let's say you last year, right? You had the best year ever. And again, this is, I think sometimes we don't like to own up to this kind of stuff. It's the same thing from like, people don't like to count 70.3s as their PRs if it's like a super heavy downstream swim, right? Or the swim's cut off, or your swim was 19 minutes and it's usually 31, but when the weather's perfect, we don't discount that. We're like, yeah, nailed it today. It's like, but so example, like, and we'll hop in our questions in a minute, but so, last year, Texas 70.3, even before that, the wind was insane. It was outrageous, huge tailwind, huge headwind. Let's say last year you put out 230 watts as your average, right? And you're for the whole ride, difficult ride, super windy. And you came off the bike and your bike split was, like I said, 230. Well, in this year, you put out the same watts, right? Exact same. You did less training, maybe life got in the way, but you were still able to hold on to last year's fitness, and you biked 225 power, but you were faster because of the conditions. Who's better? Right? Who's better? The version last year, the better this year. And let's say your swim time and run time were totally equal. You put out more watts, you put out less watts this year, but your time was faster strictly because the conditions were better, right? And even if you ran the same this year, I'd argue that it was slower. It was a slower run because the conditions this year were significantly better than last year. It was hotter last year. So which one's better? One's a PR on paper.
Mm-hmm.
One's a PR by personal best performance, not just the time, but what fitness did you have, right? And that's just something that I think everyone needs to just swallow, right? And just, okay, you know what? I get it. My PR is Ironman Arizona, like 10 years ago. The day was perfect. Like I never had any issues whatsoever. I perfectly paced the bike. I had a great swim, and I had an absolutely outstanding run. But also the weather was so unbelievably perfect. And so the chances of me, having that exact day again, where it all kind of everything fell into place, everything. That all comes together. So which one is the best, right? And so I think that's an argument we could always go back and forth with. And that's why I think using the term like what's your PR, it's like it's so relative, right? My PR is my PR 70.3 swim is 18 minutes, or when wasn't it? It was Chattanooga 70.3 4 years ago when it was super downstream. But we always
people don't
that.
really say that. Do they?
No, they don't. We always leave that. People leave that shit out, right? Because like I don't want to I want to upplay my best one. Just like we do when we have a bad performance, like if I said, but I've been injured, I haven't really ran much in the last few weeks. Like just own it, right? I don't understand the inability that we've had, or that we've just kind of had to just to stop owning things, because it's not a negative. It's just life, right? Everybody has shit that they're going through, everybody, right? But we're so afraid to talk about it. We're so afraid to let people know what's really going on, right? That you're, and I think that just magnifies the pressure we put on ourselves, because you see Sally Mae on Facebook and she's got this beautiful family and everything's going great. She's posting meals of her, these beautiful meal, she's getting a risotto every other day. She's living the dream. She got motivational quotes. Behind the scenes, her life might be falling apart, but she's got a race coming up. So we're going to keep on racing. And let's say she goes out and has like a very, very horrific race, because to be frank, why wouldn't she? If your life is in turmoil, stress levels high, everything's high, the likelihood of you having the best race of your life is very low. But you're not concerned about that. That's not reality. The reality is what I've been showing people that my life is really like, so I better have a PR to match it. And
yeah,
again, it's
the false persona, man, that
it
puts
is
pressure on yourself. But some people like that, and I was just thinking as you're saying that, let's say Ironman is roughly a 12-hour day or 14-hour day or whatever. Say you're on vacation with your family and you have nothing planned. Well, you have a day planned where you want to go see certain things throughout the day, and there's no problems whatsoever. There's no distractions, but you're with people, so you want to go see, the new art show, and your brother-in-law wants to go get ice cream, and so how many things can go like awry in just a simple day with no obstacles, and then you look at a race like this, and how many things can kind of go against the grain throughout the day. I mean, there's just so many different variables, like you're saying. I mean, certain people, depending on when they start, might get way more wind on the bike course versus someone else, right? If they get out there and they get done early enough, they might miss like a rainstorm or whatever it may be. So a lot of things can go wrong out there. And like it was interesting. You talk about courses and back to back, and whenever I trained for Wisconsin, my swim training, I take that very, very seriously. I work a lot harder because I know, like, but if I do a race like Chattanooga this year, I mean, I swam pretty hard for it, but it's, both were like, this year it was wetsuit legal at Chat, right? But every time I go to Wisconsin, I am like, I really kind of pride myself in getting into some pretty serious swim shape for me. And I am like, all right, I feel good about it every time. And I've just never had a good swim up there, like a 120 or something like that. Beats me up. Good thing I am in good shape, because if I got out of there and wasn't ready for that, it might be a hell of a day. But like this year at Chat, right? Downstream, didn't have as much, but wetsuit legal. And I'm still 20 minutes faster, and I didn't even train as hard. So like, is that my PR? I hear what you're saying, man. It's real easy to kind of pick apart PRs and stuff like that. But I always like to think, like my PR swim, if I could ever do Madison in like an hour and 5 minutes or something like that, that's what would count, to me, because it's just a lot more challenging, and like you're saying, man, PRs are like, it's just an interesting question, and I like what you say, because it's sort of like, how do we get the best out of ourselves, right? And that, when you got that PR lingering over you, and instead of just doing a good race and thinking about what you're doing in the moment, man, that can be so detrimental to what you're going to do. And I think going forward, we just have to chill in, getting into these races, because it is, like I just said out of the gate, I just think that's like, okay, if you can get your mindset around the idea that we do this and we work hard in training, and it's like something that we want to be stronger and healthier and all that kind of stuff. And then when you get to the race, be able to put that in the fun bucket and be ready to go out and just kind of let go and just show your work, instead of feeling pressure to actually do better than you really are or something like that. Because at what point, are we not going to improve anymore? I mean, it's like we think we're, like, I, what do I think? I'm like a 10-hour Ironman or something, I mean, maybe, but like, what is that going to, like, at what point are we going to have to just kind of accept that it's a win when you get through that thing and you just feel good the next day?
It's so much about, like, again, like going back to, yes, like, do you feel like you have a 10-hour one in you somewhere? But but in you doesn't mean you're going to have one unless you X, Y, and Z, right? Or unless, A, B, and C go correctly, so that's just one of those things where, yes, like you can believe that, but at some point belief, is only as strong as the action that follows, right? Because that's the only thing that gets you a result, right? But I also think there's a beauty in going into a race but almost frustrating, and maybe not negative, but like, I don't really expect much. I've had a rough time. Like they're at an athlete did Texas 7.3. He was building for St. Jordan, had just a really, really, really tough week before with work. Walks in Texas 7.3, is like had a few niggles here and there, and was kind of like, yeah, I really don't know how, the day is gonna unfold. I don't really know how it's gonna go. I'm kind of nervous. I'm just kind of here, taking some time for myself, away from life. If you had read his athlete like review of the week before, you'd have been like, this guy might be like about to give up. Like he might be he might sell his bike next week. He just that like dejected and frustrated with life and how things were unfolding.
Yeah,
and
week to
then
week, man. Wow.
yeah, week to week. Yeah. And then goes out the following Sunday and PRs about 40 minutes and runs his second fastest half marathon ever. I mean, just blew it all out of the water. And like it's just one of those things where, and again, like PRs can be numbers. You have the freedom to make them whatever you want and define it however you want. But to me, I think, a healthier perspective, right? You can maybe have two, right? Your PR is your fastest time ever, right? Across any distance, regardless, because we can't control the bad conditions. We can't control the good, right? So we take it with we can get up, we can get it. Nobody's going to complain about 60 degrees, but we're definitely going to tell you about 95, right? So it's all about, you just take it, right? But maybe have one PR that's time, then have one that is just, man, I'm just really proud of the effort and the fitness that I got out of doing this. And it's usually going to be less work, right? Life was really tough, or I'm proud of my effort. I'm proud of my execution. We had an athlete that did Oceanside that said it was the most proud she's ever been of any race she's ever done, but it wasn't even her fastest 70.3. So tell me, right? What matters more? Like you went back to PRs defining you, or you got to put your PRs on your in your bio on Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is, because that defines you. Which one are you more proud? Which one is more of a definition of who you are? Your 70.3 digital time in Athlinks, or the race that you did where you feel the most proud of because you overcame all these things during the race and maybe even overcame a shit ton of life before it? Which one's more of a definition of you, right? When you talk about defining moments and defining things, it's about experience and environment, right? It's not about a time. And we get so hung up on letting these times or qualifications or podium literally define the fabric of who we are, right? We are less of a person because we didn't PR. We are more of a person because, my PR is this. No one gives a fuck. Okay, let me just say right now, no one gives a fuck about your PR. They really don't. They might tell you they do. They're just being honest with you. Very few people.
I know.
I mean, very few people give a shit. They might pretend, and they're pretending. And if you ask them 5 minutes later, they'd be like, "What is it you do again? You do like those races, like you go all at the same time?" They have no idea, right? Or if someone is interested in your PR, they only ask you because they want you to ask them in return so they can talk about themselves. Like that is the cycle that triathletes live in, right? It's like, what race are you doing? They don't care. They just want you to ask them in return, what races are you doing? And that's the typical triathlon, dinner conversation. What's your A race this year? Hey, let me go ahead and let you know what I'm doing this year, because I want to talk about ourselves. No one gives a fuck. So that's just one of those things where, what defines you? The race that defined you, who you are, what you've been through, what you've overcome, how you squeezed every ounce to make it through. I guarantee you because guess what, guys? The PRs come easy. They come easy. They're the easiest race you've probably ever done. Not because you didn't train, not because the course wasn't hard, but because everything went together, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember, like, you retire, you're looking back on your most proudest days? You're not going to be like, man, dude, there was this day in 2024, perfect sunshine. I just sat, on my front steps, doing jack shit all day because life was easy. No, you're literally never going to remember that day. You remember all the days that were super hard, but you made something happen, right? Or the moments that struck you that meant something, right? That's what sticks with you, not the easy stuff. We don't grow from the easy stuff. And frankly, most of your PRs, yes, they're not easy. I'm not trying to discount the effort and time and commitment and execution and fitness that goes into PRs. But there is an easier aspect when it's called luck, right? That falls into, most pros will tell you if they win a race, there's always luck involved. Always. There's always some kind of luck involved, right? And it might just be because something bad didn't happen. But what's more of a definition, right? Of you, the one you're the most proud of, the one that you dug the deepest on? Like, I reference this a lot. The last year I raced a ton. My proudest race was Texas 70.3. And it was my slowest of the three that I did that year. Podium did Chattanooga at 70.3, but I was more disappointed in that race because of I feel like I didn't do enough. And not in like a negative way. I didn't push myself to the brink like I did at Texas. And I'm very rarely proud of myself after a race. but regardless of time, and I was like, man, I'm proud of what I did today. I'm proud of how how deep I was able to dig today. And that's the stuff that matters, right? That's what defines you or helps you, more importantly, which is again the reason why so many of us got in this. It helps redefine who we are, because that's how we started this sport, right? We didn't start into it to get every single PR at every race. That just became an obsession that we got into, once we started to get one, like, oh, this feels pretty good. Like, I got a podium, and this is I'm gonna get another one. It's like, chasing the the things you shouldn't chase, forgetting why you got into it. We got into it to become better, right? Better at fitness, better at health, better people. Think about the race that did that. The PRs aren't really ever the ones that do that. And if they are, awesome, fantastic. But as you race longer and race more and get older, that might not be it. You ask a lot of the parents that we work with that got to race with their kids, right? Favorite race ever with their kids, right? That's it. It's about the experience, right? It's about the the racing with their teammates. It was so awesome. I'll never forget it, right? You only remember your PR because you wrote it down.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. It's one of those things. I think it's just a really, really, really fine line.
Well, I think kind of PRs can be accidental, because I know that I think what we do sometimes is forget why, like you were just saying, why we get into the sport, and it's to be better, healthier, stronger, all this kind of stuff like that. And then if you're training for something, and I want to, even if it's not a PR, I just want to go do a, sub 12-hour Ironman or whatever it might be. Once you have that kind of in your head, it's sort of like a virus that just sticks there. It's always like everything you do is just dictated by that number. But if you can go through training and really like enjoy, 4 or 5 hour rides and some of these long runs, and just be like, man, I feel good out here, and just kind of cruise. That's what I always say is like, when you got a month or two left before a race, if things start clicking right then and you're feeling good and you're enjoying it, you got a really good shot at doing well, because the whole thing is pleasurable. It's not like a grind. You talk about the Olympics a lot, right? I just can't imagine the thought of, training for an Olympic 50 or something like that in a swim. The amount of like pressure that would have to be on that, and then even that, I would imagine, as such a short distance, like it's such a mental thing at that point. The people that can handle what they're doing and really focus on the little things and just enjoy the process probably perform better in the big events and things like that. So for me, it's all about 2 to 3 months going into your big race, even that last, really nice big block or whatever, and just being like in the spot where, man, I'm really having fun with this. I think that really translates to the race. And at that point, you can kind of understand how to approach the race and be, more relaxed and just have a better day in general, without thinking, because if you're on that bike and you're like, oh, that 12 hours is like, you've been there, right? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's ticking away, man. I'm gonna have to, if I don't get off this bike in 20 minutes, I'm gonna have to run my fastest ever half marathon or something like that. And that, you're done right there, most likely.
I mean, here's the thing, and I think you've even had this moment. I think everyone's had it. It's like, you're aiming for, your expectation is to go sub 11, right? And you click through 20 miles, and because sub 11 is your goal, right, for the day. It doesn't mean it's your PR or whatever. It could be anything, any number, but that you just pulled out of a hat, 300 days ago when you signed up for the race. You're like, sub 11s for sure. I could do this. And you hit mile 20, and you're like doing simple math, and you're like, all right, what's at 11:03? Shit. What do? No one speeds up. No one. If you say you do, you're lying, because you're not going to make up 3 minutes over 6 miles in the back half of a marathon. What do most people do? Because here's the thing: maybe you were capable of, on that day, going 11:01, but you realize, or you calculate in your head, you're not going to hit this imaginary number you pulled out of your ass a year ago, and so you just mail it. I'm not going to hit it, so I'll just go walk this aid station, maybe walk a bit longer, and you come out with an 11:10. You're 9 minutes slower than what you could have done. But you didn't. But you weren't hitting the mark. So people, they always like, I'm not going to get it. Then what's the point, right? Everybody does that. What's the point? I'm not going to hit it. I'll just soak it in and do whatever and have that. And it's just like, the point is to get every ounce of what we have in us out on race day. That's it. That's all you should have. That's all you should expect of yourself, to get every ounce of fitness out of yourself and performance out of yourself on race day. Don't be the one that has a reservoir, a reserve of effort and performance because they were hedging their bet too much. Don't be the person. Lay it all on the damn line. Let it fly. And that's just like, but people don't do that, right? They're so afraid, or they're calculating. They're like, I'm gonna go sub 11 today, and they're on track for like a 10:55. Then they're like, oh, I'm gonna slow down, so I got it in the bag. What?
Mm-hmm.
What do you have in the bag? Maybe if it's 10:49 in you, right? Like we do this stuff all the time, and because we are so attached to these expectations and numbers on a clock or numbers on our watch, whatever it is. Like the goal is to get the best out of you, not to mail it in, not to self-sabotage, not to be your own worst critic and paralyze yourself to death on race day. The point is to get it all out of you and then see where you land, right? And from a fitness standpoint, you can either walk into race day, right? And you can walk in with a gallon of fitness because you know what? You worked freaking hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here I am saying freaking when I dropped the F-bomb like 4 times today.
Yeah.
Is you go in and no, I lost my track because I just should have used the F-bomb. Oh, you're going with a gallon of fitness because you worked your butt off, and you can expect some kind of a return, right, from the gallon. But the point is to get the gallon, to walk away with an empty gallon, an empty jug, totally empty, nothing left, right? And frankly, you don't want it just empty. You want it like halfway dented, right? Because you've really squeezed every ounce of it in there. Or
Yeah.
you might be walking into it with an aluminum can worth, right? You got 12 ounces. Get the best out of it. But, right, same thing. Crinkle it up, get the rest of it, and toss in the trash can. But also understand and be objective and realize I might not be able to expect the same result with my aluminum can worth size of fitness as I would have been had I had the time or availability or commitment or motivation to walk through those, the start line with a gallon. Right. And so that's, again, it's objectivity, it's perspective, but it also allows you to appreciate, the aluminum can fitness worth of results you got that day, and you got every ounce of it, and here's the difference. What are you gonna be most proud of? Walking through, finishing with just totally gassed, right? With your aluminum can dented on the ground, crushed, maybe crushed on your head like an old college frat boy, and we got everything out of it, or are you gonna be more proud of the gallon of fitness you walked in with, but you still left about, 20 ounces in it because you played it safe? Which one are you more proud of, right? And it's just, again, it goes to perspective and what's your own reality of what's the most important thing.
Yeah, well, it's always more enjoyable, I guess, to back in the day when we had the college road trips and stuff like that. When you get to the gas station where the arrow was under the E, you made it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you risked it. You took some risk, and I like that analogy because, I mean, for me, I like how clean that is. You want that thing to be empty when you cross the finish line. That's the timing of it, right? So, one of the most important parts of that, I believe, is when you get whether you're doing a half or a full, when you get to that turnaround on the run, you want to make sure you got some good gas left, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got just enough to time it out, so you can you're a little behind, and you want to push it down a little bit, and you don't want to run out of gas at 2 miles before the finish line. But you got to have something in the tank to go right then, and that's really when I mean, you probably feel the same way. When you get to that halfway point, whatever it is, of the run, you kind of know, right? You kind of know if you burn, if you're going to be just on fumes way too early, or if you got what you need to actually make it happen. Yeah, it's going to hurt, it's going to be painful, but you kind of know, you just have that feeling. So,
Yep.
I mean, really, when you think about racing, if you think about that analogy you just made with the gallon, and you think about getting to that halfway point of the run, feeling like you got it left, I mean, that really is the secret for most people. I mean, if you're a pro, I mean, maybe you want to stretch that out or whatever and use your reserve tank if you have one. But for the most part, that's a pretty good rule of thumb, I think, to just be ready at that halfway point of the run to make sure you got something left in that gallon, just enough, but then you can dent it out as you get down to the finisher chute.
Just own it. It's like own what you've done, own what you haven't done, right? And then the biggest thing is figure out how to use it for the best of your ability on race day. Because the more you think negatively, the more negative things are likely going to happen. That's just a fact. Like, if you think negatively, things negative happen. That's all you're going to look for, right? Think positively, positive things are going to happen, right? Doesn't mean you're not due to have, a mishap, but it also means if a mishap does happen, you're going to be more positive about overcoming it, right? So it's like, and prepare yourself for that. Stop the panic train. Like, just it's not doing anybody any good, right? Focus on the positive, and if something bad happens, deal with it after the race, right? Don't preemptively ask for a psychological, assessment of what might happen, right? It's like walking into a therapist's office. This is coach life right here. Walking into a therapist's office, she's like, "So what's on your mind?" "Well, I'm really worried about this job I might lose in the next 4 years." And they're like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just really stressed. Like, I don't know. Like, what if I lose my job, in 4 years?" And they're going to be like, "Excuse me? Why are we talking about this right now? Do you currently have a job?" "Yes." "Is it pretty stable?" "Yeah, it's pretty stable." "Do you like it?" "Yep." "So why are we talking about you might lose your job in 4 years? Are we really going to use our 60 minutes like this?" Welcome to coaching life in April and May. That is basically what it is. It is, why are we even talking about what might happen? Why aren't we focusing on what is happening and how well we can do with what we have? But that's life. That's how humans work, right? We like to get so wrapped up and so caught up in the addictive nature of anxiety that, like, oh, I got so worried about this, or someone posted on the Texas group that there's 3 potholes on this turn, and I wonder what PSI I should use, because if I have the wrong PSI, I might get a flat tire. And I'm very good at changing flat tires. I don't know if I get a flat tire. No, but it'll help. I wonder how many mechanical, I might have. Like, what if I don't? I don't know. And you're like, well, okay, wait a minute, stop. Just turn it all off, right? Everyone should leave, right? Everyone should leave and vacate every Ironman Facebook page on the planet that when your race is like 4 weeks out. Just leave. You're gonna know everything you need to know when you wait. But all it's gonna do is cause. But this guy, Johnny Tried the Great posted his brick workout Saturday, and he did 50-mile bike ride, 5-mile run, 50-mile bike ride, 5-mile run, 50-mile bike ride, 5-mile run. Should I be doing that? And you're like, no, you shouldn't be an idiot. You should just do the training that you have and be well prepared on race day. Don't do cute busy work. Actually be prepared to race well. But that's what happens. Like, the more you see, and especially when you're in like a sensitive time frame, when you're looking through these ridiculous posts on Facebook, like, I read it, I'm like, I feel you almost want to like chime in and, as like a public service announcement, be like, most of you should just stop what you're doing right now, right, and do it differently, because you're crushing yourself. Like, that's what happens, right? That's the current water temp is 72. Do you think it'd be what's illegal? What do I look like, right? If I could predict that, I wouldn't be coaching triathlon. I would be a billionaire predicting stocks, okay? Who knows what it's going to be? Bring your wetsuit and then deal with it. We think it's going to be windy? The hell if I know. I live in the South. One day it's snowing, the other day it's raining, the other day it's 95 degrees. I have no idea, okay? We don't know. All you really need to know is do the best of what you have, do the best what you have on the day that you're given, and then see what happens. That's it. Leave the rest. Leave the panic. See you later.
Yeah. I always like the guy who the weekend before did the whole course, the road and race.
That's right.
Like,
hey
it's
guys,
in good shape. I just did the whole thing.
That's right. So I wanted to give you guys a good YouTube video. You can follow my YouTube channel
Yeah,
at triathlontim.com. And I went ahead and swam the 2.4 and biked the 112 and 26.2. Please follow along in my not time-lapse reel YouTube video that takes 14 hours and 37 minutes. And you're like,
I think I'm
I
ready
don't
to
have time for this. I don't have time, but I'm ready to roll. And I don't have time for this. Like, just, it's way too much, right? There's way too much. Kind of like I said, maybe it wasn't on the podcast, but a few weeks ago, everyone always, or maybe it was a Zoom, everyone always thought the internet was going to be a good thing, right? Because information is power. No, it's not. Hey, very, very few pieces of information are power, because now it's more disinformation, and everyone can post whatever they want to all the time about anything, and they could be an expert or an influencer or whatever it is. There's just too much shit. Focus on what you can do, because that's all you really need to know. It's what you can do And guess what? You have no clue what the day is going to be like until you wake up and sort it out yourself and along the way. So prepare for that. Exit all Facebook pages, put up the big do sign, tell them Crushing Iron sent you, and we'll see you on Monday.
Yeah, man, it is funny, all the information. I do think that has brought the middle of the pack up, because some of the biggest training secrets in history of triathlon back in the day were kind of proprietary, but now a lot of people know a lot of stuff. But now, like you said, there's too much and it's gone overboard the other way. So for me, it's all about just kind of meditate on your gallon of gas analogy and you'll be fine.
Gallon of gas.
Yeah.
Whichever one. Just show up with whatever you got.
Yeah.
Don't worry about, whatever. What if the sunshine is coming, or what if the wind's coming out south or southwest? It might tip over my aluminum can, and then what? What the fuck? I don't know. Just listen. Just get out there and have fun. Rip it. It's early season. Rip it. No matter if it's your A, B, or C race. I'm telling you right now. We'll end it here. Exit all pages. Focus on the work that you have done. Right now, it's your the 1 or 2 reds you might have in the last 2 or 3 months. And even if you do, just recognize it and own it and be okay with it, because no one, even if they want you to think it, no one's training is perfect. No one. No one has the perfect build. No one has the perfect life. No one has the perfect training. No one has it perfectly figured out all the time. Because if they did have it like that, then guess what? Everyone would PR at every race, no matter what, all the time. And that's just not the case, right? So just wrap that around your head, focus on yourself, put your blinders on, close in your circle, and get ready to have a good day.
Yeah. Sounds simple enough, man. I like that.
Yeah, and we appreciate you posting all the questions. I will try to get back to those. I did a shit job on those today. But listen, hopefully you enjoyed today's cast. We have these now in the Rolodex, and we will lead off on Monday's podcast with Mark Strickland and his question of, do you have a basic nutrition plan for the bike portion of an Ironman distance or century ride? Please and thank you. Coming up next time, the Crushing Iron Podcast, episode 572.
Yeah. Ooh. See, you just got to have something to look forward to.
That's right. Something to look forward to.
Look forward to tomorrow's workout after you do today's. That's all you got to do.
Just look forward to it. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks again for giving us your time. We love you. As always, go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you want more info on our coaches tab or on our coaching and the coaches that we have, click on the coaches tab, figure out more about each and every one that we have. If you want to get a hold of Mike, you can get a hold of him, crushingiron@gmail.com. And if you want to get a hold of me, I'm at c26coach@gmail.com. And this podcast was sponsored by My Last Cup of Coffee.
Well, you got some good ones down there?
Nah, it's the same old. I walked over and grabbed a small cup before the start of the podcast, and I feel like it did well.
Fellow?
I'm still here.
Oh, okay. All right, man. Well, it's been a joy.
It's been a doozy. All right, dude. I'll check you later.
All right.